Greetings, coming back at you here again with another watch related topic. Today I'm wearing my Omega 1020 again, and today it's going to be a little bit of a story time video, okay? Watches are my biggest passion in life, okay? And I'm just going to share my story of how it came to be. You know, everybody has their little story of how they got into the watch hobby. This is mine. Smoking on a cigar, La Floridita. Been neglecting my cigars, haven't been keeping them humidified, and they're all cracking and falling apart. So got to get that fixed ASAP. I haven't smoked cigars in a while. So anyway, my biggest passion before was music, but it was sort of like a temporary passion, okay? I felt very strongly and very deeply about music at around 14. I would listen to Johnny Cash, and mainly Johnny Cash is what kind of got me into music because I really like that country, sort of that depressing country music and that vibe, okay? It wasn't like typical country music. It was more like I said, emotional country music, okay? And I really like the sound of it, the guitars and everything, the melodies. It was really cool to me. So I picked up acoustic guitar, started messing around with it a little bit. Then I got into more of like the Hendrix stuff, Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, anything that kind of pulled my heartstrings, especially guitar solos, grunge music, stuff like that. I got really, really, really heavy into music from around 14 to like, let's say, my 20s, my early 20s. It was all about music, but it was more of like a sort of a coping mechanism, you know? Like, it was just angst, you know, sort of a teenage angst and kind of growing older and then kind of feeling out how things are, and kind of music helps with a lot of stuff like that, you know? But over time, I just kind of lost interest, you know. Like I said, I would learn solos from Hendrix, this and that. I could play a lot of stuff. It's no problem. I've been playing guitar for like what, 14 years already. I don't play anymore too much, but I just kind of was really passionate about it, and then all of a sudden I just stopped giving a damn about it. You know, like music kind of doesn't move me the same way that it used to. It just kind of got boring, you know, listening to the same uh, Guns N' Roses, "Sweet Child of Mine" solo over and over again, or Led Zeppelin over again, and it's just like it just kind of got stale, to be honest with you. And it just kind of just faded completely, you know. But what I wanted to get at is like it's interesting because that was a passion of mine and it was a big passion of mine, but I've never felt the same about anything as I do with watches. Like watches to me are just incredible. And it came out of nowhere really. Like I just started looking into nice watches, basically luxurious goods, okay? I wanted to dress nice. I wanted to smell nice with nice fragrances, cologne, stuff like that. I just wanted to improve myself as a person, especially as a man, you know, growing older and stuff like that. I wanted to be a little bit more mature, get my style, get my luxury game up there. And one of the things that I first thought of was like, I should get a luxury watch, you know, if I'm gonna go with nice clothing, you know, sort of a luxurious lifestyle, smoke cigars, drink scotch and stuff like that, right? I should um I should step up my watch game. So I got my first Omega 1020. It was a stainless steel with a black dial, day dates, the TV sort of shaped case, and it was kind of love at first sight, you know. The sweeping seconds hand, and then it had the pop back, snap back, whatever case back like this one has. So you just take a little knife or watch opening tool and pop it open, and I would look at the movement, and it just really captivated me on how intricate and interesting a watch is, how it runs like by a spring. That's it, spring powered, nothing else, and it runs for 50 years, 100 years, as long as it's serviced regularly. Like, to me, that's very interesting because like, I was also into cars, and I still kind of am into cars, but cars aren't like as interesting to me because once you learn about cars, like, they're not as complicated anymore, Like, you get the whole gist of it, okay? The gas powers the engine, transmission, this and that, blah, 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 blah. Whereas watches to me are a very complicated mechanical phenomenon, you know? And I like to know how things work. And with cars, you can figure out how things work fairly quickly, okay? Fairly quickly. You can teach yourself, and like in a couple years, you'll know the ins and outs of a majority of cars. But with watches and the variety of different movements and, more higher end stuff like Patek Philippe's or Zenith's or, you know, Alanga Unzuna, um, just the more complicated, nice pieces, like, to me, were very spectacular works of art, but also a work of craftsmanship. And to think somebody a long time ago just sat down and kind of thought about this stuff and then figured out that, oh, if I put these little gears together and then I put some sort of power source, so a mainspring and the balance and the hairspring and all this stuff, like, to me it just kind of boggles the mind of how that came to be, how somebody just sat down and just thought of that and invented basically a machine that could keep accurate time, basically mechanically, for centuries, for a long, 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 you know terms of time. And it became a very, very interesting and fierce passion of mine. It's something that I've been into for a while, and I feel that I will be into forever. Whereas music was sort of like a temporary passion, you know, it kind of helped me get through my teenage angst and all that stuff like that. Watches are more of like a stable, lifelong hobby, something that I really, really feel deeply about, and I like messing around with it. I want to make a hobby out of watch repair, this and that. I want to really, really figure out how everything works. But speaking to various watchmakers and even my local watchmaker, they say you could do this for 30, 40 years, even more, and you'll still learn something new every single day. Like, you can never figure it out entirely. You learn something new every day, and that's kind of what intrigues me, because with cars, yeah, they release new cars and new mechanical innovations and stuff like that all the time, sure, but it's kind of a thing that when you learn it, you kind of know it. Whereas a watchmaker, like, let's say I bring a watchmaker a Valjoux 7750, that movement is completely different than my Omega 1020. And my Omega 1020 is different than Omega 564 movement, and the 564 movement is different than the 721, I think it is, or something like that. Like, what I'm trying to get at is, like, each movement has its own different intricacies, and it's all new. So, like, you could work on a Valjoux 7750, and then you pop open this different watch, and it's just a completely different experience, and you have to go at it a different way, and the functionality is similar, but it's just each movement is unique. Each movement is unique. Like, even the older vintage pieces, like the Elgins or whatever, are completely different than Hamiltons of the same time period. And getting deeper into the whole craftsmanship of watches, it's like, what fascinates me is that, like, my local watchmaker in particular, like, he works on a lot of antique and old timepieces. So um if there's no parts available, he makes the parts by hand. Like he has all these machines and everything. And like, what boggles my mind is that somebody could just make those parts out of nothing, out of metal and a machine, and engineer it to such tiny, microscopic, um, you know, calculations and just microscopic points that it all works. Like if you put it together, it all works. Like it's so, to me, it's so captivating. And that's one of the things that I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about watches in general. I like the way they look. I like the way they function, mechanical pieces in particular, even quartz, even solar. Like I'm intrigued by the whole nine yards of all that stuff, right? But it's just it's a deeper passion. It's the passion for the watch itself, the way it looks and all that stuff, and also what's inside, the movements and all that stuff. And to me that's fascinating, and it'll always be fascinating. So I never felt so passionately about anything in my entire life, basically. And it's cool to finally find a hobby and sort of a calling, because my whole life I was looking for like something. I was like, at music, I'm like, oh yeah, I could write music, this and that, all that stuff, whatever. But can you really do anything with that? Nowadays when people listen to, rap and mumble rap and, electronic music and all this stuff, it's like, can you really do anything, even if you could shred a guitar like Hendrix or even better than Hendrix? It's like, will anybody really appreciate that? Kind of difficult, kind of difficult. But with watches, they existed for such a long time, and I believe that they will always exist. And there's new people getting into the hobby every day, and it may be sort of a little niche hobby, um, because a lot of people are buying Apple watches and also upgrading and quartz watches and all this stuff. But for those of us who are really into the watches, like, and people that really get into watches, it's very interesting. It's very interesting. I have a funny story too. I went to the beach with like two girls in the summer, and I was wearing my Tudor day date, right? And I didn't think it through because it was sort of spontaneous. They're like, "Oh, you want to go?" I'm like, "Okay, whatever, let's go." And then I forgot that I was wearing my vintage Tudor. And then we went to the beach, whatever, whatever. I was drinking a couple beers, this and that. And they're like, "Oh, let's go take a swim in the water." And then I look at my wrist and I'm like, I have this, luxury piece for like 2 grand on my wrist. And I'm like, it's vintage. And I'm like, do I really want to go swimming with this on? So I'm like, oh no, I'll just chill out on the beach or whatever. And they're like, oh, that's lame, blah, 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 blah. And basically, I lost the chance to get laid twice over over a watch. Okay. Over a freaking watch. Like, I'm like, fuck it, I don't want to go swimming, fuck this. Like, I care more about my watch than any of this other bullshit. And to me, that's kind of funny. That's kind of hilarious how watches are more important to me than stuff like that. Like, I kind of shrugged it off. I'm like, I don't give a fucking damn. It's like, they'll be gone. They'll leave or whatever, whatever, but this tutor on my wrist will always be there for the rest of my life. So it's like, fuck it. This is more important to me than going for a quick swim, right? And acting like the cool guy, whatever, having fun, and then, you know, doing all that stuff. But to me, there's no permanence in that, whereas there's permanence in watches. So some people may think that's odd, but truly, like, I've met other watch enthusiasts, like this one particular guy. He's an older gentleman, he's married, and he collects pocket watches. Like, he has thousands and thousands of pocket watches. And that's also his life. He has his wife, but his wife kind of deals with it. Like, she thinks he's kind of like a weirdo for liking that stuff and spending so much money on that type of stuff, but she kind of accepts it in one way. But in the other way, I know that like they hate that, like women and stuff like that. Like, they don't really like when a guy's super super passionate about something. If he's like more passionate about their hobby than about them. You know what I'm saying? So that's pretty funny. But I see a lot of people that are like uh, collectors that have been lifetime collectors and stuff like that, and it's like it's really interesting to see and to have that common conversation with him. You know, like you could even say like, "Oh, I talked to him. I'm like, do you have any key wound pocket watch?" He's like, "Yeah, of course." And then he asked me about, do I have any triple repeaters or minute repeaters or whatever wristwatches, and I'm like, oh no, repeating wristwatches are way too expensive for me, and they're just mechanically complicated. So even the servicing costs are just ridiculous. So unless you find a watchmaker that really knows his stuff, a lot of people can't service those minute repeaters. And that's why I want to get into the hobby more and more myself, to kind of get into it and to eventually repair my own watches no matter what it is, whether it's a triple repeater, whether it's a moon phase, this and that, blah blah blah. I don't give a damn about no certifications, you know. It's like if you sit down and really put your mind into it, you read a couple books, you watch a couple videos online, and you really put time and effort into it, in a number of years you can figure it out, you know. And that's what's interesting to me. It's a hobby that uh, is never ending. Like I said, going back to cars, it's like once you know how to fix a car, you'll know how to fix them all, basically. But with watches, it's like you could fix one watch, and you might have, like I said, 30 years experience, and then somebody gives you a watch, or you buy a watch, and you want to repair it, and you don't know what the hell to do or what the hell that's about, you know? And that's what's interesting. I like challenges and I like complications, you know? So that's about it, guys. That's my little video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Maybe you guys have similar stories of how you got into the watch hobby, but to me, it's more of a hobby. It's kind of a lifestyle, you know. I care more about watches like than a lot of different things, and like some people think that's a little bit weird how I just gave up music and don't give a damn about music anymore and just got into watches, you know. Like, but it's just it's finding what you like and what really makes you happy and what makes you feel passion. Okay, it's all about passion. It's not just a simple collection. It's not just a simple thing. You know, it's the passion behind it and the happiness one gets out of it. You know, that's hard to find nowadays. You know, it's really hard to find nowadays. So anyway, people, take it easy.